Hello and welcome to section 3 within module 2 of the PeopleCert Scrum Master II certification training. Module number 2 is about the Scrum Master role. We already completed 2 sections. In the third section now we're going to cover serving the product owner, serving the organization, and what the Scrum Master doesn't do, and followed by a self-assessment questionnaire. You might recollect that in the section 1, we have covered the core competencies of the Scrum Master. And in section number 2, we have covered the Scrum Master as a leader and how the Scrum Master serves the Scrum team. And now we look at how the Scrum Master serves the product owner, the organization, and what they don't do. As per the Scrum Guide, the Scrum Master's service to the product owner includes helping find techniques for effective product goal definition and product backlog management. We are going to cover the concept of the product goal and the backlog afterwards. Also helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items. The Scrum teaming meaning the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers all combined together into a single Scrum team. Help establish empirical product planning for a complex environment. Planning based on experience and observation rather than based on theory. Last but not the least, facilitating stakeholder collaboration as requested or needed. The product and the product goal. A product is a vehicle to deliver value. It has a clear boundary, known stakeholders, and well-defined users or customers. A product could be a service, a physical product, or something more abstract. Note the concept of value. Think about what it means to you. Focus on the fact that value is in the eyes of the customer or the other stakeholders, not of the providers. Product owners will need to ensure the Scrum team fully understands the value proposition for the product in terms of the desired valuable business outcomes, as well as increased flexibility to respond to change and greater transparency for investment decisions in product development. The product goal. This is the long-term objective for the Scrum team that is in the product backlog. While the product backlog includes the product backlog items such as epics and user stories, it also includes the product goal. It describes a future state of the product which serves as a target for the Scrum team to plan against. The product backlog emerges to define what will fulfill the product goal, which means while there is a product goal, the product backlog is emerging, which means it is subject to change until the product goal is fulfilled. So the product goal describes a future state of the product, which can serve as a target for the Scrum team to plan against. It is in the product backlog as said before, and the rest of the product backlog emerges to define what will fulfill the goal. The product goal is therefore the long-term objective for the Scrum team. They must fulfill or abandon one objective before taking on the next. Let's take a look at an example. Here are some examples of product goals. The first one here is to create a website for cake and flower shops to sell their products online. So while the cake and the flowers, these are the products, but creating the website to sell them online is the product goal. Another one is increase company presence in the market. And the last one here is increase annual revenue by 20% after the product is sold, whatever that product is. Therefore, the product goal, as we see in the left image here, is part of the product backlog. So the product backlog includes the product goal and the requirements of the product, known as more commonly as epics and user stories. The user stories being more granular and epics being less granular. Therefore, we see here in the product backlog, the more granular ones at the top, and again, they have been prioritized. For example, story number 1 is at the top, which means that is the highest priority to be pulled into the sprint planning and eventually into the sprint backlog. And here into the sprint backlog, whatever the capacity is for the sprint, that will decide how many user stories will be pulled from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. So for example, In this case, we have taken all 1, 2, and 3 user story and brought them into the sprint backlog. While the remaining ones, epics, they still need to be further broken down into smaller user stories, and eventually they may be pulled into the sprint backlog of subsequent sprints. So if you notice for the product goal here is the same, create a website for cake and flower shops to sell their products online. And items such as create a basic website and create a basic purchase option will be initially in the product backlog. And these are eventually being moved to the sprint backlog on priority.